tonight, in this deep dive, we are looking at the invisible architecture that guides every dollar we spend.
Mm-hmm.
We are exploring why the things we cannot see hold the most power over our choices, and how the quietest forces in the global economy are also the most unyielding.
Yeah, and to figure this out, we are pulling together a really fascinating mix of data today. We are looking at some deep in the weeds academic strategy journals, corporate finance definitions, and even live behavioral market data,
Right.
all to really understand why we do the things we do.
Because our mission here is to understand these invisible forces, the hidden moats and these quiet tolls that secretly shape our daily financial lives.
Exactly.
And more importantly, we want to figure out why we so willingly participate in them. I mean, we are talking about the underlying structure of your choices.
And to truly understand the global economy, you first have to look at your own life. You kind of have to look at the quiet moments you experience every single week.
So let's start there. Let's start with a very ordinary, everyday scene. Just picture yourself standing at a checkout counter, or maybe you are just sitting on your couch staring at an email on your phone.
Oh, yeah. The auto-renew email.
Exactly. It's a notification for an auto-renewing subscription. We all know this feeling, right?
Yeah.
You are paying for like 3 different streaming services just because you are trying to watch one specific show.
Right.
And you get the email saying the price just went up again. You look at it and you actually see a cheaper alternative right in front of you, another brand, another service.
But you don't switch.
No, you don't. Instead of switching, you just tap your phone. You use the exact same card you always use to buy the exact same brand you always buy, even though you know the price went up.
It is a moment of profound, quiet friction. I mean, you know there is a better deal out there, but you stay right where you are.
It really is. It feels like a tiny, invisible toll booth just took a fraction of your money, and, well, you didn't even put up a fight.
Right.
And what usually follows that moment is a quiet, lingering guilt. You sit there on the couch and think, I should be better at hunting for deals. I'm just being lazy.
But we need to stop right there because that feeling, that self-judgment, is completely misplaced.
Really?
Yes, it isn't laziness. What you are experiencing in that moment is not a personal failure of willpower. You are actually interacting with a massive, invisible fortress designed specifically to keep you inside.
A fortress. Okay, let's unpack this. What are we actually bumping up against here?
Well, in finance and economics, this core concept is defined simply and clearly. It is called the economic moat.
So that is what this is called. It's not just a habit, it's a moat.
Exactly. Coined originally by Warren Buffett, an economic moat is a structural competitive advantage. It protects a company from its rivals in the exact same way a physical moat protects a medieval castle.
Right.
It keeps the invaders out, and it keeps the inhabitants inside.
So if a company has a wide moat, they don't have to worry as much about someone else coming along and stealing you, the customer, away.
Precisely.
And these moats are built on something specific, right? What the research calls barriers to entry.
That's right. These barriers can be network effects, switching costs, or deep brand loyalty. They are the structural realities that a new competitor must overcome to even enter the market.
Okay.
But what is truly fascinating about the modern economy is that the moat itself is usually constructed from something you cannot physically touch.
Which brings us to a really interesting question. Okay, so a moat makes perfect sense for a physical product or, a medieval castle.
Sure.
But what about today? We aren't building castles anymore. So much of our world is digital and conceptual. How does a company build a massive financial fortress out of nothing?
This is where the academic research from the Global Strategy Journal on Global Value Chains becomes incredibly illuminating.
Actually, before we look at the numbers, we keep mentioning global value chains, or GVCs. Let's make sure we ground this. What does that actually look like in plain English?
Think of it as the entire global sequence of how a product comes to exist. From the initial spark of an idea in a laboratory, to the sourcing of raw materials from one country, the assembly in another, all the way to the marketing.
The marketing and distribution that puts it in your hands.
Exactly, is the full journey of value creation. And the central finding of this research is that this chain is no longer ruled by physical things. The real power lies in intangible assets.
We're talking about computerized information like databases and software.
Right.
Innovative property like patents and trademarks.
Yes.
And economic competencies like brand equity and organizational knowledge.
Yeah, and the data attached to this shift is staggering. The sources show that the returns captured by these intangible assets are now 1.7 times greater than the returns on tangible physical assets.
Whoa, 1.7 times.
Yeah. In 2019 alone, intangible assets accounted for nearly $5.5 trillion in returns within the global value chains of manufactured goods.
It is a fundamental shift in how we understand value. I mean, we naturally tend to think of value as the heavy machinery, the factory, the physical product you can hold in your hand.
The stuff you can see.
But the data reveals that the tangible assets are becoming secondary. The physical things are just vessels for the invisible ideas that govern them.
There is a specific analogy from the research that I think makes this perfectly clear.
Oh, yes.
The yeast approach.
I love this analogy. Let's sit with this for a second. If the physical materials and the human labor are the flour and the water, intangible assets are the yeast. If I just hand you a bowl of flour and water, you essentially have paste. It's basically worthless.
Exactly.
But the yeast, the firm-specific knowledge, the brand trust, the software, that is what makes the bread rise. That is what gives it flavor, texture, and value.
Yeah.
You can't see the yeast in the final loaf of bread, but it is the singular reason you are willing to buy it.
It captures the dynamic perfectly. The yeast is the invisible force that extracts massive value from otherwise basic raw ingredients.
But I want to push back on this a little. If these assets are invisible, just ideas, networks, and lines of code, how do they actually force us to keep paying? Like, why do they hold so much power over our wallets?
It comes down to their unique economic properties. Intangible assets are what economists call non-rivalrous.
Meaning they don't get used up.
Exactly. They are highly scalable at a very low marginal cost. If a company builds a physical car, they have to buy new steel and glass for the next car.
Right.
But once a piece of software is written, or a brand identity is established, or a patent is filed, it costs almost nothing to deploy it a million more times. And the geographic power of these assets is shifting dramatically.
The research highlights China's trajectory here, which is really fascinating.
It is. China has risen from capturing just 6% of these global intangible rents in the year 2000 to over 19% in 2019.
Wait, how does China capture 19% of intangible rents if they are traditionally known for physical manufacturing? I mean, we usually think of them as the world's factory floor.
Because they recognized where the real power is. They are increasingly specializing in upstream activities, like research and development, as well as highly specialized production technologies.
Ah, I see.
The lesson here is that the real money is made before a physical product ever even exists.
Right.
The creators of the yeast hold the power, not just the people baking the bread.
So how does this invisible yeast show up when you are just trying to buy a cup of coffee or restock your pantry? Because this macro-level science manifests in very specific, recognizable behaviors.
Yeah, it does.
Our sources outline 3 distinct patterns, and the first one is absolutely everywhere. It's the invisible toll road.
And there is no better example of this than the global payments networks, specifically MasterCard and Visa. When we look at the market analysis from TradingView, these networks function as a massive oligopoly built on a two-sided network effect.
Let's break that down, because two-sided network effect can sound like textbook jargon, but in practice, it's just a loop. Everyone uses the cards because every store accepts them, and every store accepts them because everyone carries the cards.
It's a perfect loop. And what is brilliant about their moat is their position in the transaction. When you swipe your card, Visa isn't actually lending you the money.
Wait, really? They don't take on that risk?
They take zero credit risk. The bank issues the credit. Visa and MasterCard simply sit between the banks and the merchants and collect a tiny toll, an assessment fee of roughly 0.15% per transaction.
Wow.
They don't own the cars, they just own the road.
0.15%. It is so small that as consumers, we never even feel it. We just walk the road.
Exactly.
But at scale, across trillions of dollars in global commerce, it generates software-like operating margins for MasterCard of between 58% and 69%.
It's incredible.
Now, it is absolutely worth noting that this kind of dominance does attract regulatory and antitrust scrutiny regarding how fees are set for merchants. But strictly looking at the structure itself, without taking any side on those regulations, the business model is a pure, frictionless toll road.
We don't notice the toll, so we keep walking. But that raises an interesting question. If we don't even notice a fraction of a penny toll from Visa, what happens when a company actively raises prices right in our face? Why do we still pay?
This is the second behavioral pattern we fall into, inelastic demand. This is what happens when the broader economy gets difficult.
Hmm.
When inflation hits and the input costs of raw materials rise, our behavior becomes incredibly predictable. We see the price of our favorite product go up, we might complain about it, but we simply absorb the cost. We
Right.
still buy it.
As Brookmont Capital notes in their market analysis, a company's unique value proposition creates this inelastic demand. The demand doesn't stretch or break when the price changes.
Because they possess pricing power. They raise their prices to pass on the costs of inflation. And because we rely on the intangible value of that brand, the trust, the consistency, the identity it gives us, we just sigh and pay it.
We sigh and we pay.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the third pattern of behavior, which happens when the economy gets truly frightening, the retreat to quality.
Right.
When true recessions hit, our behavior shifts again. The world feels risky, so we run for cover.
When you look at the market data during a recession, a fascinating human reflex kicks in. According to the research from Van Eck, we see a distinct retreat to recession-proof industries.
Yeah.
We instinctively lean toward utilities, discount retailers, and repair services. Investors and consumers alike practice what is called quality investing, a concept originally championed by the legendary Benjamin Graham.
And quality investing means looking for companies with strong balance sheets, dependable earnings, and high return on equity.
Meaning companies that generate a massive return on the money shareholders put in. When the world outside the castle walls feels chaotic and dangerous, we crave the safety of the moat.
We retreat to what is familiar and secure. The intangible asset of trust becomes infinitely more valuable to us than the potential savings of trying something new.
This brings us to a crucial pivot in our conversation. I want to go back to that feeling we talked about at the very beginning.
The couch.
Yes, that moment at the checkout counter or on the couch, the guilt you feel for not shopping around, the frustration at your own perceived laziness when you let that subscription renew.
It is time to look at that guilt differently. Because paying the toll, staying loyal to a brand, or absorbing a price hike is not a personal failure. It is not financial laziness.
To understand why, we need to look at a vital distinction from the Corporate Finance Institute. They separate two types of profit: accounting profit and economic profit.
Accounting profit is the literal dollars and cents. It is the raw math on a spreadsheet. Option A saves you $10, option B costs you $5.
But economic profit is entirely different. Economic profit includes something much more human. It includes opportunity costs.
Yes.
It factors in what you must give up in time, mental energy, and alternative choices to achieve a certain outcome.
When you stay within the moat, you aren't being tricked. Your brain is rapidly calculating economic profit.
The opportunity cost of breaking your routine, spending 3 hours researching a new brand, or leaving a trusted network that worked perfectly well is simply too high.
Exactly.
You are engaging in a highly rational calculation. You are paying a financial premium to acquire an intangible asset for yourself: peace of mind, trust, and reduced friction.
It makes complete human sense. You are not broken, you are human. We tend to judge our financial decisions strictly by accounting profit, looking only at the numbers and beating ourselves up. But we live our lives by economic profit.
And this connects to something much deeper. Money is never just money. It is a reflection of how we manage our human energy.
Just as the global economy now values intangible assets like networks, ideas, and patents 1.7 times more than physical machines, we do the exact same thing in our personal lives.
We have our own personal moats.
Yeah.
Our personal moats are our boundaries.
Yeah.
Our intangible assets are our relationships, our sense of belonging, and our emotional safety.
When you blindly tap a card or stick with a familiar brand, even when the price goes up, you are not being careless. You are fiercely protecting your internal resources.
You allow the financial toll because your human energy is your most inelastic, precious asset. You protect your time and your peace because those are the things you truly cannot afford to lose. The architecture of the global economy mirrors the architecture of the human mind. The fortresses are built on the outside because the deep desire for safety and predictability exists on the inside.
We pay for the invisible yeast because we need the bread to rise predictably every single time.
The next time you tap your card or choose the familiar brand, don't judge yourself. Just notice the invisible architecture holding you and recognize that your peace of mind is an intangible asset worth protecting.
Yeah.
But it also leaves us with a question to sit with. If your peace of mind is an intangible asset worth paying a financial premium for, what other invisible tolls are you paying with your time and your energy just to avoid the friction of change?
If this conversation felt true for you, if something in here landed, we would love for you to subscribe to Leone Patterns so you never miss what we explore next.
Leave a comment and tell us, what did this bring up for you? We read every single one.
We are building a community here, people who think about money differently, not as a number to chase, but as a human experience to understand.
You are not alone in this, and
Yeah.
we are genuinely glad you are here at Leone Patterns. Same pace, same questions. See you then.